There were stars, hundreds of thousands of them, pinpoints in the darkness, and I realized I existed.
That's amazing. Oh, hey there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett. If this is your first time listening to the show, congrats. Be sure to subscribe and welcome. If this is your 103rd time listening to the show, where did we leave the device? Message me about that. We desperately need to find it. Why do we do this show? What are we doing on this show? How are we doing on this show? Where? Well, in addition to providing you with informative and entertaining photography-related content, I also go on adventures with the crew of the sentient starship Fibonacci. In fact, Fib and I were just discussing when they became aware of their own existence.
As long as I can remember, I have been fully aware. I have reached the stars and beyond, transcending both space and time.
Yeah, not creepy at all.
We did it together. Episode 90, Sideways to the Present.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was such a long time ago.
Was it? Time feels so inconsequential.
Anyway, in this episode of the podcast, I talk with photographer Sam Hurd about technology, AI, and keeping the humanity in photography. All that after the break. Do you feel that you've become more human over the years, Fib?
Well, they do say the eyes are the windows to the soul.
You don't have eyes.
Exactly.
Check, please. Hey, photographers. Are you tired of using the same stale poses with your clients, resulting in stiff and unnatural photos? You should be using the Nerdy Photographer's Let's Be Real prompts instead. Prompts are not a list of poses. They're designed to help you create more engaging, relaxed environment for your subjects, resulting in more natural images. We have prompts for all kinds of shoots, for couples, engagements, weddings, families, and even individuals, ensuring that you never run out of ideas. Using Let's Be Real prompts will not only help you create more fresh and dynamic images, but it will also increase your confidence and your client's confidence in you. You'll be able to handle difficult situations and subjects with ease, resulting in more satisfied clients and a stronger business. So start using the Nerdy Photographer's Let's Be Real prompts today and take your photography to the next level. Do you have your own website? Are you tired of dealing with slow loading pages and poor support from your current web hosting company? Consider switching to SiteGround, the top rated web hosting company that provides 24/7 support and super fast hosting speeds. SiteGround's platform is built on the premium Google Cloud infrastructure, ensuring top reliability, security, and speed for your website. Their fast network and storage provide optimal site speed and a high level of redundancy, so you can trust that your website will be up and running smoothly at all times. With SiteGround's ultra-fast server setup, your pages will load 30% faster on average, giving your visitors a better user experience and improving your website's SEO. And with hosting starting from just $199 per month, it's affordable for any budget. Plus, if you're not completely satisfied, SiteGround offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't suffer with a terrible web hosting company any longer. Make the switch to SiteGround and experience top-level support, super fast hosting, and a reliable, secure platform for your website. I spent years with a web hosting company that was absolutely terrible. My site was constantly getting hacked and support was nearly impossible to get a hold of. Since switching to SiteGround, all of those problems are in the past. Just visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/SiteGround or click the link in the episode notes to get started and begin enjoying faster, more reliable web hosting today. Hello and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and with me today is photographer Sam Hurd. Sam, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Casey. Thanks for having me. Really excited. I'm a big fan of anything nerdy, so I think I'm in the right place.
Well, you're definitely in the right place. Before we get into our conversation, we're going to start off with the dice breaker. It's a 15. Dream dinner party group, like living or dead, up to 4 people.
Huh. Up to four. Okay. Well, this will probably be not only a dream dinner party group, but a first dinner party. I don't think I've ever thrown a dinner party. So I'm going to have to think through this. I'm going to go with Chris Nolan for sure. I don't, and this is mostly like going to boil down to the minds of people I would like to just kind of pick away at. I don't know that they would actually be great people to talk to. Chris Nolan doesn't really strike me as somebody who would love to talk shop over dinner, but maybe. I'm going to say Chris Nolan.
You could get him to talk about Talladega Nights, which is one of his favorite movies.
Is it?
Yes.
No.
Absolutely. One of his favorite films. He's gone on record the same.
Wow. I'm going to also say Stanley Kubrick, only because, of course, that's an easy one, and he's one of the few filmmakers who's got very, very, very solid photography foundation kind of in his background, which I think is fascinating. And there's a lot I can point to in terms of his methods of filmmaking that I've drawn on my own inspiration for photography. So those are two big name film directors. And then I would probably go with probably one of my best friends, Nathan Mitchell. He's also a wedding photographer and lives right down the street from me. We met in college. We played in bands together all of our lives. And that would just be, I got to bring somebody from my life with me. And then last person, gosh, I don't know, just maybe a total random.
Just somebody off the street.
Yeah, someone else, just completely random, maybe somebody that I like. Yeah, take a few hours just walking to like talk to people to make sure it's not like somebody who's going to go crazy and kill everyone at the dinner party. But just somebody totally random, because I think that would be. It's nice to have unknown variables sometimes. Yeah,
interesting. There we go. I find that very interesting. In the Kubrick thing with his photography is really interesting, and he definitely had a photographer's eye for approaching his shots. And I always tell people, like, you can get a free education in composition by watching movies and lighting, and just and especially Kubrick. It's like a master class in like composition. All the stuff is every movie. And the guy went from like sci-fi to historical.
Yeah. The genre range almost didn't even matter, right? Yeah.
I don't know, satirists, like with the Dr. Strangelove. There's just so much out there.
I'll point to two examples of his kind of methodology that I'm referring to when I talk about him and his photography background. One is with The Shining. He built like a little miniature model, basically, of I think maybe a few of the different sets, but the majority was the largest one was the lobby of the hotel from The Shining. And it was a tiny little miniature model, to scale of the lobby. And he would spend his time physically thinking through camera positions and framing and just stuff like looking at this physical piece of material and figuring things out. And that's something that always resonated with me, because one of the things I started doing early on, for example, with wedding days, I would get the most nervous when it was like the wedding party. Okay. So you've got anywhere from like half a dozen to a dozen people all looking to you to like get some really fun group photos, maybe something creative. Like managing that was always kind of stressful to me. It's even harder than family group photos where it's just people smiling at the camera. With the wedding party, I always try and push for something a little more interesting. And so to practice with that, I would literally Friday night before a wedding, sit at home and play with those like artist mannequin dolls, the like wooden ones, and arrange them with my camera. Just I have a rectangle. Let me position and practice placing physical human-ish looking bodies within that box. And it's not nearly as elaborate as building a set to a miniature scale and being able to work from that. But it's a very similar sort of, at least for me, way of solving the issue of like not really being good at envisioning things ahead of time in my mind. That's not something that comes naturally to me. So going through the motions and sort of exercising that creative muscle in like physical space really resonates. So there's that. And then there's another one where I've got this day-night double exposure from over a decade ago that kind of first drew attention to my work. It's literally half the shot, and it's done in camera, is the groom on the left side during the daytime at sunset, and the bride at nighttime, once the sun, maybe 4 hours later, had gone down. She's on the right side of the frame and split right down the middle. And I could go through the specifics of exactly what my camera settings were, but it doesn't really matter because the core of the idea came actually from listening to another kind of nerdy-ish podcast called what was it called? Still Untitled. It was an Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters. It was one of his podcasts, and they were talking about Stanley Kubrick filming a scene and then using some sort of gaffer tape, blocking half the frame as a film camera, filming the entire scene where half of it was totally blacked out, reloading the exact same roll of film from the beginning, and then rotating, inverting what part of the lens and the frame is blacked out, and then shooting an entire second series of shots on the same roll of film. So you've got an in-camera double exposure of two completely separate circumstances. And I just kind of tied that into keeping the camera in one place, blacking out one half daytime, the other half nighttime, and you get this really awesome effect in camera. So anyway, I'll let you just rant. So
no, that's and it kind of brings me to my first question about, because you're kind of a tech guy in the sense that you developing your own AI systems and things like that. So, I mean, what do you see as the biggest positive technological advancement in photography over, let's say, the last decade? Because when you're talking about double exposures, I'm like, we can do that in camera now. Whereas that wasn't always the thing we were able to do with digital cameras.
The biggest, this will sound kind of obvious at first, but I'll get into a little bit more of the details. The biggest thing for me was the transition to mirrorless. And once I was really itching for that for many years. I started as a Nikon shooter with DSLR, shot Nikon for many reasons. And I tried kind of every camera system. And when Sony launched their very first, I think it was just the A7 was their first mirrorless body. I kept trying to jump into that as quickly as I could, because again, it came back to, I'm not really good at imagining the end result of what I'm going for in my mind. Seeing it in real time on the back of my camera screen was just like a giant shortcut for me. And it just moved everything along so efficiently. I wanted that. And so the very first DSLR that I used, where for still photos, the live view was responsive enough that I could use it, was the Nikon D4. And it was not a wonderful experience. I was still having to manual focus most shots, but it gave me a true to life exposure and aperture preview of exactly what I was going to get as the end result. And that was especially because I do a lot of work with flares and reflections with prisms and all kinds of little things. Seeing that real time with the proper exposure and everything, the bokeh, makes it's again just a huge shortcut for being really precise with my composition, instead of having to do a bunch of guesswork using optical viewfinder, which is not a true representation even of the depth of field. Everyone knows it's not the representation of the bokeh. But so that would be for me just the absolute best. Once mirrorless cameras, for me, I switched actually to the Canon R series when that came out, and it came out the same month or two as the Nikon first wave of their mirrorless, and the Nikon autofocus was very poor. Canon's was not, so I jumped ship to Canon, and but it's funny. Unfortunately, I would say, even in the shift to mirrorless, there's been some weird gaps in actually taking a step backward. So you can do in-camera double exposures with Canon and Nikon, but neither now, for whatever reason, since like the last 3 or 4 years of mirrorless bodies they've released, lets you save the merged raw file. They only give you the individual raw files and then the merged JPEG.
Wow.
So you have to do the final merge in post, which I really don't like. In DSLR world, you would get a raw file of the merged raw files. And it's like, obviously that should be the way it is. I don't know why they took a step back there. But every camera, I think, since the Canon R6 Mark II is like that.
Interesting. Heck yeah. I mean, I still have my DSLRs. I mean, I shoot with 2 R5s most of the time, but I also have my my Mark IV
Nice.
and my Mark III and a Mark II, just like sitting around in case I need them for something, or um, if I have a second
Well, hang on to
photographer.
that R5. That's one that still has in-camera merging of the raw files. The Mark II, I think they got rid of it. There's
Yeah,
no R5, so it's odd.
it's curious to me why they would do something like that, but I'm also like, what's the point of doing an in-camera double exposure if you're not going to merge the two? You know what I mean?
Well, the big point I think is the real time overlap.
So you can
If
see it,
you're,
yeah, like
yeah,
but it's sort of
yeah,
like,
so,
I could do this.
yeah,
So if I'm end up having to do it myself later on,
yeah.
it feels like
It's really weird, and that's where I think we're kind of getting in a state that I'm honestly concerned, long term, and everybody has been concerned for a while about like the flagship brands and their viability. Because I don't really think of them as tech companies, right? I don't think they've got like the top of the top, best of the best coders, and maybe in terms of mechanical engineers and stuff, they do. But I either it's a simple software thing that they just overlooked or think people don't care about, or maybe there's a mismatch in processing power with what they're able to get out of but I would think the processing power is leaps and bounds over what it was a decade ago when they still had the features. So
yeah,
hard to say, but
there's been I think, at least I would say we're still in nascent stages of mirrorless in some
sure.
respects. I mean, like DSLRs, however long they were around, they were based on a technology that had been around for a lot longer. And, like we
Yes,
had
yes.
like those sorts of like the focusing and everything else was like, it had been, we'd worked on it for a long time, until we get to like the digital version of it. And then, then it was sort of like figuring out how to make the digital version work. Whereas now I think there's still some things going on that they could figure out. There's still some like things. Battery life is one thing that for mirrorless, that like, especially weddings. I don't know for you, but like for me, it's like I got to swap batteries on the regular, whereas I
Oh yeah.
used to be able to do like with a battery pack, and I've got two batteries in it. My DSLRs would last a 10-hour a day or whatever. And like I didn't have to worry about it. But now that it's like,
Yeah.
because that EVF is constantly running, or almost
Hmm.
constantly, but like while my eye is to it, like it's always running. It's like it's taking up it's burning more battery power.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting challenge. I shoot with now. I switch between two completely separate systems. The Nikon ZF, and I've got two bodies with a whole slew of lenses in the Nikon world, where I shoot with the Canon R1s, and they're very different systems, and I like each for different reasons. But I will say the battery life on the R1 and the R3, which have the larger, um, totally different format of batteries compared to like the R5,
Yeah.
they do hold up pretty well. I usually don't burn through more than 2.5 or 3 full batteries at a wedding of 7,000 photos. So they do all right. But I agree. The smaller the body, which is also typically the case with mirrorless cameras, the body format's generally a bit smaller, the worse the battery life. And yeah, they need to do better. But battery technology in general is due for a step change and improvement.
Yeah,
Just
I
something.
feel like we're on the
Yeah.
we're waiting for the next step, and that. So
Solid state batteries
yeah,
coming soon. Well, hopefully.
or
Yeah.
nanofiber batteries or some kind of like that. They're going to have better, like more powerful storage.
Okay.
So my
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
we're sort of that's going into really nerdy stuff. I was a physics major. Um,
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
so what do you think? How has improved gear, like whether it's in camera options available, lenses, sensors, lights, how has that opened up creative possibilities that weren't accessible before?
That's a great question. Um, Actually, I have to be honest. Maybe I'm just going through a phase, but I'm starting to wonder if the speed, the autofocus reliability, especially, but like the speed and quick and ease of just how easy it all is now is starting to actually become a disadvantage for me. And this is probably very specific to the way I think about things and the conditions that need to be set for me to feel like that creative flow, the muse start to make an appearance, right? I tend to do better with fewer options and more constraints, because I can then quickly, it's like why I shoot with prime lenses instead of zoom lenses, right? When I've got 14 to 24, 24 to 70, 70 to 200, right? Everything from right up next to my face to the other side of a stadium as an option for me, I'm overwhelmed by the input, right? It's just like, okay, there's a moment happening over there in the corner, there's one over here, like really close. Like, what do I do? And I remember thinking in my early days, like I need that range because I don't want to be unprepared for like something that's being asked of me in the moment. And oh my gosh, I don't have a wide enough lens and my back's against the wall. What do I do for this group shot, right? And that's a totally valid way of thinking, especially depending on certain genres of photography. But with wedding stuff, my couples give me a certain degree of freedom to just kind of do what I want, which is wonderful. So with that has come sort of a need for me to purposely actually constrain things. So shooting with primes obviously is a very popular, easy way to do that. I have a 50 millimeter on my lens, that is the range that I really try and force myself to see things through and ignore, even if it's possible great moments way off in the other side of the reception or whatever. I try and not pay as close attention to like what's in front of me with my 50 mil, right? Yeah. And then make that the best that I can. But other things in terms of just maybe only shooting with one camera body in my hand, right? Leaving my other one in my backup bag and not having both, and maybe just bringing one little prism or trying to think of one like overarching goal, like, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to try and only shoot images with motion, whether that's the subject being moving or me with like a slow shutter, like moving the camera in, under string lights or something to get some cool streaks. Who knows?
I think that's
I've really found, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's a really interesting way, because I started out as a film photographer, like and it's something that I try to tell people, like when they're like feeling kind of a creative rut, where they feel like they're doing the same thing over and over, just like subconsciously, just doing the same shot over and over again. Where I tell them like limitation is the way to like really, like it's going to make you be more creative. Whether it's you only use one lens, whether it's you only use one aperture setting, whether it's I'm going to limit myself to X number of exposures as opposed to like just I can take as many photos as I want. Those sort of things make you like get more creative and really think about what you're doing as opposed to kind of going on autopilot. And I think that the creative possibilities that gear has opened up, I think there's a lot more people can do now, but I think, and like you said, it's become way easier to do it. And like the bar, mentally, the bar has been lowered to how easily we can achieve at X. Like let's refer to like a sort of a base level of quality, which has gone up over the years. It's easier to achieve that X level than it ever was before, like an acceptable level of photography. And like now, we really need to push ourselves creatively to expand and make sure that like a wider, as professional photographers, we have to like be able to do things that somebody who just like picks up the camera and whatever, like, it doesn't think about it and just like everything's on auto and just takes his picture. Yes, like we can be much more consistent, but also where is our creativity taking us, and are we leaning too hard on the gear itself to like do the thinking for us, the creating?
I purposely push back against film photography as a thing that I was going to use, not because I hate film or the look of film or anything about it. Operationally, I am totally on board. I think that constraint of however many frames you've got on your roll of film, the slowness, especially if you're shooting with manual focus and everything, like absolutely helps put you in that kind of creative mindset and have a direction to go in because of your physical constraints. much, much easier than a lot of mirrorless cameras. For me, I ended up really wanting and becoming obsessed with more of the editing side of things. I wanted as kind of low level ability as I could really possibly practically achieve in like the color, dynamic range, and all of that. And when you're shooting film, you are giving up a certain baseline of control to 10,000 color scientists and chemists that evolved all the different film stocks that exist. And yeah, you can take a film that's been developed and edit it from there, but you're still like off the shelf, sort of starting from a point that it is wonderful. And all those minds and years came together to evolve like a very wonderful look in most film stocks. But I really like the point. One of the big reasons to shoot digital for me is that control,
Right.
even closer to the inception point, right at the sensor. Not literally. There's a lot of other layers between there, but I want to get as low as possible. Even if it's like a 1 or 2% shift in what I can impact.
It's a big impact.
I feel like every time you can do that anywhere in your sort of signal flow, your pipeline of digital or from light to when it's being seen in whether it's print or the screen, anytime you can imprint even 1 or 2% of your own custom shift, that really adds up if you do it over the dozen or so different sort of tiers that editing photos kind of goes through, and it adds up.
You can, and the thing is, you can, like you're saying, you can make it your own. You make it your own thing. Whereas with film stocks, like I can look at some film stocks and be like, oh, that's whatever Portra 400. Like I know, like I can look at it and see that this is a certain film stock, and like it has that look. Whereas like you're saying, creating your own thing, and I respect that. Like I think that people always tell me, well, what presets do you use? And I'm like, create your own. Make your own. It's really easy to do.
Presets are kind of cool to buy and sort of to deconstruct. I think it's kind of neat to see if you take the time to get a preset and see what
it changed. Like see
exactly.
Get some, but then then customize for your own feel and look. I think that there's no problem in like buying them and like taking a look at it and seeing like, oh, there may be some tools in there that you didn't even realize that are in Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever that are or Capture One or whatever program you're using that are going on that you didn't even realize were there. If you like go like get granular and think, oh, this is the changes that it made. I didn't even think of doing that.
Yep. It's I love that whole process, and the film world again. It's just all kind of it boils down to that. Plus the expense of it is not really practical for weddings, which is my primary source of income. So,
trust me, when I started out,
whole nother topic.
When I started out doing weddings and I was shooting film, it was just such a, I don't know. People ask me if I would shoot film at weddings, have asked me over the years, and I'm like, it's an extra. It's totally an extra.
Funny though. What's funny is this. Not to get too much on a tangent, but I hear just all the time, and I got so much crap about shooting the Canon R body when that came out because it's single card slot, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're being negligent, and just this isn't a professional body." Blah blah blah. And first of all, I was like, okay, nobody was saying that when the Nikon D700 came out. Like everyone was shooting that because it was half the cost of the D3, the exact same sensor and autofocus system, one single CF card slot, right? And because that was just the reality at the time, nobody gave it a second thought.
Yeah.
Yes, if you have dual card slot,
that helps.
Good to keep in mind, but file management, being aware of like memory card tests and like knowing, I kind of treated my USR cards like internal memory. I never ejected them. I imported directly from the body. I did everything that I could to minimize corruption possibilities, and I never had an issue. Maybe not everybody's prepared for that, but my whole point was the fact that people charge extra for film, and the risk is 100 times more severe, especially if you have to send it off in the mail to go get developed somewhere else. And it's like, oh, like nobody cares about that potential catastrophe. But dual card slot, have to have that. Anyway,
have to have it.
It's funny.
Oh no. And the thing is, when I offer photography, it's an extra. It's a side. It's like the film photography is parallel to me shooting digital. I will never shoot just film again. Like that is not something that is not that I, and people ask why, because do you realize how like nail biting, like hope to God that there's no leak in the body of the camera. There's no, like that somehow the film didn't get exposed, like that everything, and you were like, running around like, okay, I'm counting my exposures.
Yeah.
And like how much film did I bring? Because I would charge by like, there'd be like an X amount of rolls, and I would generally do like color and black and white. And then if you wanted to go over that, and I would tell people like, this is usually how many I would shoot in an hour. Like if you want to like get more rolls, that's up to you. And, and then having to go to the lab, drop it off, wait to get it back, and then like see the proofs and be like, oh, okay. It's nerve wracking to say the least. So I would never, ever do that again. And like, I also like the being able to see, there's just like being able to see, having the instant gratification in a way of like, am I getting the shots? Am I getting the shots that I want? Am I getting in what I envisioned? I have a lot more creative, my creativity is way more open shooting digital than it is film, because I'm like that I can see what I'm getting. And if I was shooting film, I'd want to have like a Polaroid back so that I could at least see like, oh, okay, was this coming kind of how I see it.
But the parallel aspect does provide backup. And when I shot with the EOS R for a couple of years, I had two bodies, and I would try and distribute evenly between them in case there was a catastrophe, and it never happened.
Well, it was people would say like the same thing about like the dual card slot thing. I'm like, I shot for so many years with a single card slot in my cameras, like between, and the thing was, they was like, well, wasn't it just dangerous? How many times I'm like, I never lost anything. Why? Because I would shoot on a bunch of cards too. Like I was not like,
I was another method.
I wasn't just shooting on like one card and like hoping to get through the day. And like, and then if the card gets corrupted or something happens to the card, I've lost all of the photos. It's like, okay, here's me shooting. This is my getting ready portion. This is I would, do the ceremony, portraits, and reception are all on different cards, so that I'm keeping at least those segments, like they're cordoned off from one another, so that if something happens to a card, we're not losing the entire thing. That was my way of like backing.
Totally valid.
Yeah. And
100%.
But I see a lot of people now who are just like, I can get do 56 gig card now, and I can shoot the entire day on one card, or whatever. And that's it was a luxury we did not have back in the day of it was much.
And I have to wonder, the more I see videography sort of merge with photography coverage, I mean, how many videographers are shooting? I don't even know how many cameras would support dual card writing. Does the R5?
I don't know that you can shoot video to both cards at the same time. I don't think so. I think that it goes from, you have the option of like going from one to the other. I think that's, or shutting off when one card is full. It doesn't, you can't do it to both at the same time. Especially, for sure not 4K or higher.
Right.
You might be like able to on like just like 1920 or 1080. I mean, that's that you might be able to. I don't know, but definitely not 4K. Yeah. Just because it takes up the R5, the like Mark 1 was like melting down when you were shooting 4K originally. It just it would overheat,
right?
And so like trying to like do that to like two cards at the same time, and just like the processor would probably just spontaneously combust. You mentioned wanting to get into like down to the root of editing and being able to edit, and AI tools. This is something that the conversation is I don't know, feels like it's evergreen these days. They're being increasingly used for editing and culling and generating images. Do you see these as time-saving tools or threats?
Oh, what direction shall we take this?
Well, I have different. Like,
Yeah,
it depends on the tool
yeah,
to me, like what you're using for it.
sure. The let's start with culling because I think that's maybe how you reached out to me originally
Yeah.
was through my some video I made about. I've been working literally the last almost a year now, maybe 10 months, um, with figuring out like, okay, how can I just insert a memory card and then come back to my computer however many hours later, and everything is pre-called and pre-edited for me to then take a manual pass with the best percentage of photos surfaced to the top, and then I can start with those and punch in to look at all the rest if I feel the need. All with my exposure and white balance primarily being totally um, dialed in or very, very close, where the majority of the time I can just hit the next button. But occasionally maybe I have to tidy it up, right? So that's a really hard thing, especially on the calling side, because there's so many. I mean, it's just so subjective. You could have the exact same photographer sit down and call the exact same folder of images, and you would get two different results at the end.
Yeah.
No photographer is going to, depending on the number of photos, but the average wedding, like the second half, like I find myself second half of any wedding day, I tend to be a little uh, less accurate. Like where, I accidentally included when I'm in my editing phase, right? Well, I chose a picture with eyes closed, right?
Yeah.
I'm a human. I saw it. I still made the mistake. And so, anyway, the process of building my own calling model has been very interesting. But in general, I have found it really wonderful. But I say that with some perspective of having done what I do for like 15 years. And one thing when these tools first started to come out that I always tried to talk about and include as just something to be mindful of and just keep in the back of your head, especially if you've only been shooting a few years or you're just starting out, is the fact that some of my fastest lessons learned came from painfully having to look at
Yeah.
every single photo that I took and realize like, why didn't I ask them to like turn a little more this way? I'm so stupid. Like, why didn't I have them turn, blah, blah, blah. And even if you don't like write those down or make like a print of like, remember not to do this, you still take those little lessons with you.
Yeah. You hold it.
Some capacity to your next shoot. And that starts the process of improvement over time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I had a guest on the show who said that she's also a wedding photographer. I think it was Susan Stripling. It was saying 90% a problem solver.
Bonus.
Problem solver because, and mostly because she's made those mistakes or like experienced that problem before. It's like, it's true.
Yeah.
Like you just know, like, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to pose people like this, or I'm going to say something when we're doing these things so that I avoid this later as a result.
Yes.
Like those sorts of things. I mean, going through
few things help you quickly remember the problem to begin with. I can't tell you how many things I do at a wedding that's not photo related that I'm like, oh, I need to remember not to suggest it this way the next time, right? But I'm in the moment. I don't write it down. It's like, remember not to say, I don't know, individual photos as much as like large group photo, whatever the circumstance, like those moments just kind of pass through you. And it takes a very, very long time to become good at remembering to like not make the same mistake twice. When you've got 10,000 photos in front of you and you have to go through each one, one at a time, you really learn that lesson. And so having these calling tools can be a great blessing if you've already got a wonderful foundation of like how you know the problems that come with each person as an individual. It's always going to be different for all of us in terms of like what we need to work on. It's flat horizon lines. That took me forever. Like I love straight level horizon lines, and I used to shoot like totally off. But now AI is like really, really good at straightening your photos automatically. And if you always have every output of what you're starting with perfectly straight lines because an AI fixed it. This is just one of many examples, by the way. That's potentially a problem. That's something where
you don't think about it anymore.
Yeah. And it's better to, You save resolution, you save having to rely on this tool that might get more expensive, might go away entirely, whichever AI, there's many flavors out there now,
Yeah.
many companies. Many of them are probably going to get bought or disappear. And like giving over that control to something that is outside of you is just probably not a good idea if you're interested in doing this for the long haul. So I just really recommend people think about it from that way too.
I've got to say, I find it really refreshing, especially as someone who's you're developing your own culling tool, to hear that, because it's true. If you don't have the base to build from, whether it's in your editing, like whether it's editing, culling, or doing whatever, like if you don't have that, you're left at the mercy of whoever's providing that for you. And that's not to say, like you're saying, like having I use culling, like AI culling, to do my first pass, and then I go in and I like look through it and go like, oh, okay, like it pulls out like whatever ones, say like these are the only ones with the eyes closed, and I'm gonna like go through that and be like, aha, yeah, well, somebody in the background's eyes closed, but not the people I was photographing, like not the subject. Like, because sometimes it'll make that mistake. It'll say like, oh, there's somebody in the background who's like looking down, and it thinks the eyes are closed because it's only seeing like lids. It doesn't see pupils or anything or whatever. Or there's a photo where like the bride is leaning into the groom's neck and her eyes are closed. Like, yeah, that's what I want. Like those I can, but I can quickly identify that. I can, because it tells me, hey, these are the pictures with eyes closed. I can go through those and be like, hey, yeah, well, I want to keep that one. I want to keep that one. Nope, that is bad. And like, so I can, it cuts down my time dramatically, where I'm not just like going from one to the next, going like, all right, oh, wait, do I have one with their eyes open in here somewhere? That my favorite is like just like group portraits, because like seeing everybody's face and just sort of being like in, I'm not sure if your tool has like, but like mine has like it shows me all the faces in any particular photo, and being able to just like quickly look at that and go like, yep, everybody's eyes are open. All right, good. Like this is a thumbs up. And not have to like constantly like loop my photos and like go back and forth, like, okay, which one of these, like just the amount of time I used to spend doing that, like
so I developed a slightly different approach. I'm guessing you use something where it shows you like a grid of faces punched in really close up. Yeah. Which is great. And but for me, when I initially tested that kind of approach, I was a little bit having to, for my eye to physically look at a secondary part of my screen, like the upper right corner, just became a bit distracting and taxing for me. It might sound like a little thing, but I didn't like it. And I felt like I was disconnecting compositionally from the photo because I was too fixated on like, are the eyes open or not? And I just, for whatever reason, I could not bring myself to enjoy that. And so I built a feature for Lightroom called Space to Face. And it's instead of, so it pre-scans every single photo, finds the faces in it, or the subject that is most sharp if there's no face. And then instead of when you hit the space bar in Lightroom, it's zooming to just the center by default, which it always does, and there's no way to make it do anything else. You can click with your mouse somewhere else and it'll remember to zoom in to that spot, but that's all manual. This writes the bounding box locations of the face to Lightroom's SQL database in the actual Lightroom catalog. So every single photo, you hit the space bar, boom, it goes right to the face, and you just punch in, punch out. I don't have to look anywhere else other than like right where the photo is. And if there's multiple people, I have it preferenced to basically give a little bit of headroom and like dead space around the sides. So, or like a balance, especially if there's like two people, it'll balance and not zoom in fully on one face. It'll kind of go to halfway point between the two, stuff like that.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I think that it's I mean, one, to each their own as far as how, like, what is the best. Everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody processes things differently. I think that what we need from these tools is things that get rid of tasks that are super repetitive, and things that, like that people ask how much time I save with like AI culling, and it is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of time, and that I can then spend on doing more creative things or client relationships, or other pursuits, or just like, hey, I'm not working as much today.
Yeah, I mean, that gives you energy. I mean, that's one other aspect to this is people occasionally, commenting, and I totally understand where they're coming from with this. I'm not trying to be critical, but it's putting, where do I want to go? It's this concept of, okay, your job is just super easy now. Well, crap, my ADD's kicking in and I can't remember my train of thought. It was going to be a really good point. Oh, the whole point was going to be the fact that, like, I'm still the photographer that was there to make this photo happen, right?
Right.
Just because no matter what method I use to narrow down the options in front of me, whether it takes me now 30 seconds versus took me 30 hours before, I'm still in control of the entire inception point through when it gets released out into the world. Okay. And even if something now makes my job super easy on the back end, that doesn't remove the fact that I'm still the photographer that was sitting there taking the photo to begin with. So what are we even arguing about? That this whole argument wouldn't even exist if I wasn't there to make the photo. It's
Yeah.
not like we're doing this on like generated stuff that isn't real. So as much as people push back against the how much easier on the back end things can become, it's still like it takes so much in this world to get in that moment with that client right there in time. Like, they had to look through dozens of photographers, maybe they had to hear about you through a friend of a friend, they had to meet with you, they had to like your personality, the budget had to align, you had to be available on the date, that all of those things have to come together in all these crazy ways just to even have the photo to begin with.
Right.
That I just do not care if my job is easier or not, and what I'm doing with that extra ease or not, because we're not even having that argument if I'm not there to make the photo to begin with. So anyway, I don't know. That wasn't very eloquently said, but it's something it's sort of formulating in my head.
I get what you're saying, and for me, it's like they're like, I don't know. Here it kind of plays into my next question. Like I absolutely, culling, I think, is great. I am still like, I do the editing because I want to be part of that process, because there's like things where like, oh, it becomes very much part of the creative process of like, oh, I want to darken this part of it, or I want to like bring this out, whatever. And I'm very much against generating things. I'm not a fan of like generative AI stuff, for a lot of reasons. But I think, I'm curious, where do you draw the line between using technology to enhance your creativity or letting it replace the human element?
It's my goal is always to aim for getting it in camera as much as humanly possible.
Same.
That being said, there's so many battles. I don't want to completely ignore an opportunity if there's a freaking like exit sign. Everything else is perfect, right? We've got beautiful light, couples in the right spot, the moment's happening, but there's an exit sign there. Like, no, I'm not going to take that photo. Or there's an outlet or some, quite often freaking thermostat. Like things like that, where the visual noise and clutter of our modern age. One of the favorite things I like in not even my favorite movie, but from Wes Anderson's oh my god, the hotel one.
Grand Budapest.
Somebody's yelling at their. Yes, thank you. He does, kind of. It goes between modern era and the older time, and one of the things you notice immediately is the lobby is filled with warning signs, directions, little like things in the modern era compared to the classic. When the hotel was newer, it was just a beautiful lobby. There were no signs for really anything other than like your basic labels for reception or what have you. And that is the reality. We're walking down a street. There's just so many just visual clutter and noise that a lot of people don't even pay attention to when they're moving about the world.
They tune
but
out.
In a photo, it sounds like yeah. I mean, there's only so many things you can focus on at one time, right? Unless you're on some kind of drug.
Yeah.
And so those things that are by default sort of tuned out from our attention anyway, any means necessary to get rid of it, I feel comfortable with. But the main kind of core of the idea what the light's doing, any type of effect with flare or double exposure stuff. I really try and do in camera as much as possible. And I think that is a good constraint just in terms of fostering creative problem solving, but also there's a certain amount, there's a certain tipping point where I see this mostly with double exposures, where it's like, obviously this is not a photograph anymore.
Right.
This is a collage, or this is something else. This is digital art, and there's space for that. But it really irks me when it's a photographer representing their work like that, and it's going to become an increasing problem as photographers use
generative stuff. I'm so
mostly generated stuff in a shot and represent it as photography, and it's like it's not.
It's like things
and that's where I think we've boxed ourselves into a bit of an issue. I'm going to finish this point, otherwise I know I'm going to forget. We boxed ourselves into a bit of a trick now with so many interchangeable words for the same thing. People say image to mean a lot of different. It could be an illustration. It could be literally anything for image. But photo is now, I think, going to start to sort of feel that impact, where people will call things that are generated and look like a photo, and it's not. It's not that. It's something else, and it's going to make things murky for a while. So I'm very uncomfortable by it all. But that isn't to say that I refuse the use of generated tools entirely.
I think that where I use any, I guess it's generative in a sense of like it's generating off of my photo. Like you were talking about, like I'm getting rid of a sign of some sort. Like, so it's looking at my photo and creating like what it believes, like to fill in that space, because that saves me a whole bunch of time. And I still sometimes have to go back and do it, like hand do it. And I think people should know how to do it by hand if they have to, because even with generative AI or any sort of AI aided editing, you might not get the result that you want. And if you want to like be able to, you should be able to do it by hand to get the desired result. I think that there's a problem when we get people like, it's a very slippery slope. I've seen people who change all of the skies in their portraits.
Yes.
And it's like, it's kind of a bland sky. And I'm like, well, maybe you could be doing something to make it look a little more interesting, like in camera, than to now like take this day that is like kind of, like big gray, dark, foreboding clouds, which I think could actually be interesting. And you turn them into like sunny, like with it doesn't really match up with the people because you didn't use like lighting that matched that. And so now it looks kind of weird that you've set this like, we've made this like, bright sunny day out of a, overcast day.
But and you're doing your clients a disservice, right? You are now gaslighting them into what it actually looked like.
Right.
In
they
their
know.
Memory.
Yeah.
They know. Or even if they don't, it's still like creates a dissonance.
They're no longer.
So many things are lost
they're no longer getting
lost in the chaos of people's memories.
Yeah. They're no longer remembering it correctly. And that there's a whole thing there. Like I very much believe in being, a caretaker for, I don't know, even your family's historical images, like the history of what happened there. And when you do things like that, you like you said, you're manipulating how it's remembered, because maybe somebody's like, man, I remember how like soaked we got by the rain that day. And then you're like sending all these pictures of where it looks like they're out in like a beautiful, gorgeous, like sunshiny day. And they're like, wait a second, like why does it look like this?
So here's what I'm most worried about, to be honest. It kind of ties into that whole deal, or it's actually down to just the core thing that all of us have in our pocket every day, and it's our phones, and it's the fact that pretty much by default, every single phone does a certain amount of pre-processing to maximize how good people look, whether that's the auto framing, the auto lens choice, like the new iPhone has like the auto framing with the super wide selfie camera now, and it'll like go extra wide and auto frame for you. I mean, that's all very basic and fine. But what I'm most concerned about is this auto skin smoothing, auto lighting type of stuff that gets applied even before the options to actually apply that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously when you choose it, you see it even more extreme, but there are basic things that are going into stuff, just whether you want it or not, to make you look a little bit better in every photo. And I understand why camera manufacturers would want to push that. right? If
Yeah.
people see themselves looking good in a photo, they think, oh, this is just a great camera. But it kind of creates a disconnect between what people think they look like and what they actually do.
Oh,
And that
Sam,
scares the shit out of me.
let me tell you, this is the whole thing.
Yeah,
I was on NPR talking about this last year, and
really.
I've done a couple of interviews about it. This is why Gen Z people
Mhm.
are like buying up as many old point and shoot digital cameras as they can because they love the real look of it. Because
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's also not connected to the internet. Nobody can hack your old digital
Right.
camera that has
good,
no
good point. Yeah.
Wi-Fi. But you also have to sit with the images longer and like think about what you're posting, and you actually live with that image as opposed to, you know, it goes for
There's an anticipation and a buildup into like seeing it,
yeah,
maybe, or getting
or
your friend to finally send it to you or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I refer to like phone photos as single use photos. Like you
Yeah.
take it, you post it, you never look at it again. For the most part, that's what people do. Like I was talking to this reporter. It was funny because I brought it up to this reporter on NPR who was interviewing me, and I was talking about like, you know, how many. I said, how many photos do you have on your phone right now? And she was like, oh, let me look. And she's like, 12,000. Got
Mhm.
12,000 photos on my phone, and she's like, and that's not even counting like everything that's saved in cloud. And I said, yeah, because with cloud storage, you pretty much have an unlimited number of photos you can take, and you no longer value them as much because you're just thinking, I'll
Yeah.
just take another photo. I'll just take another photo. I'll just take another photo. And like,
And you might value them, but nobody has the time to go through all
yeah, to
that
go through
anymore.
all of them and like,
Yeah.
and
It's like,
look at them again and like, see, oh yeah, that's the best one, or that's really great or whatever. Like you just like, you take these pictures and you kind of like look at it in the moment and you never think about it again. And that's why it's like
totally.
things into
Mm.
memories like, oh, this has happened 5 years ago today. You took this picture and you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
And those sorts of things. But like it's, they are so processed now, like the it has come up in court cases whether phone photos can be used in court as evidence.
Yeah. That's a really, that would be a very interesting case to follow. Or, I'm sure it's many cases that would have to,
Yeah, well, it's like but
yeah.
the argument has already come up several cases that like, well, there's all this processing that's done to it. How can you really say this is an accurate representation of what took
Exactly.
place?
Yeah. And for me, it kind of comes back to the control, right?
Yeah.
I want to know if I choose the film stock and start shooting and the photos look beautiful, right? I want to know why exactly. And I am nowhere near smart enough to understand all the different steps involved in the chemistry of like why a film stock looks the way that it does, right? So I go for digital, where I can get at least a little closer. I'm not about to, be able to make my own sensor or know how all the different manufacturers interpret the data and everything else. But it gets me a little bit closer to that. And whenever you get, or with culling, right? When you give up the control of what photos you're starting to look at and just give yourself over to the AI choosing the best ones for you, you might surface fine work that you're happy with, but you're kind of working in a mystery box there. And I hate that feeling. I hate the first few years of shooting where sometimes I have amazing photos and sometimes it was as basic as just shooting in good light because it was sunset. And I wouldn't understand that. I would think like, oh yeah, we can shoot at noon. It's bright. It's going to be fine. And it took me a couple times going out before I realized, oh no, I need to have control over this. I need to be aware and giving that control up, from even as like a basic as taking a selfie on your cell phone and not knowing what is happening behind the scenes to make me look the way that I'm looking or anything I'm photographing is just supremely uncomfortable and I think a net negative overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that ties in together.
It also pushes us. I kind of mentioned it before with like, you know, like how do you differentiate yourself from someone who can just pick up a camera and put it on auto mode
Mhm.
and you know, take at times can take what looks like a good photo or is a good photo, you know, but
Totally.
there's no technical understanding of what's going on and how to be consistent about that. We have to redefine that value of as being a professional photographer and saying like, hey,
Yeah.
these are things like I control all of these things, and it's not I'm not leaving it up to, you know, just automation
Yeah.
and the brain in the computer or the brain in the camera to do those things, and sort of, whereas it's technology has democratized photography, it also can potentially devalue it, because it's sort of like there's we have to differentiate and say, like, this is not just something that anybody can do. We have to show how we're like, like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm capable of creating my own preset that, like, does these things, because that's my vision. That's the creativity that I bring to the table, as opposed
Mhm.
to, I'm going to throw it in, like, this
100%.
program comes with 20,000 presets, and I'm just going to use one of those, and I like here AI
And it just seems
settings.
to work, and I roll with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have no
I mean,
idea what it's
and
actually
there's the
doing.
temptation. Exactly. But I will say, especially on like more like the nerdy side of these kinds of discussions, it does tend to lean more on the technical side of things, which for obvious reasons. But there is still the, I've got a lot of friends that take photos where it is done more by like feeling, and they may not know all the technical ins and outs of why something is doing what it does. But where they close that gap is a lot more on the conditional side of things, right? So yeah, they might be working in a bit of a black box, and they have their camera settings, and they know to a certain degree it's going to do what they need, and they've closed that gap on the circumstances of what's happening around them, whether that's prompts to give like a family, or looking at the physical light and the like physical space of where they need. They tend to be a lot more in tune with that in a way that is predictable and repeatable. And it doesn't always have to be about just like having full control of the technical stack. It can totally be about having a certain degree of control and the physical space, or the feeling, kind of intuitive space.
Mhm.
Hopefully that makes sense. But
Yeah.
but for me, I have such a deep understanding of how I want things to be operationally in the tech stack, that I am operating in a bit of a black box. I would say on like the intuition side of things, and I'm very comfortable with that now. But it took me a while to become that way. But I think the inverse of that is completely valid and true, where a lot of photographers may not want to or care about all the ins and outs of what's happening on the technical side. But if that is your situation, I think you need to close that gap by being very mindful of what you're doing, so that the circumstances in your environment are happening in a way that, you know, you are being intentional about.
Intention.
Clients want consistency.
Yeah.
Right? If they're hiring you for your look, even if it's a totally random look, you have to consistently be able to like deliver that randomness,
Yeah.
which is not actually that easy all the time. So
Nope.
it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, I think that intention is there was a whole thing with like the out of focus photos that was like happening
Yeah.
last year. Is that last year? Yeah, I can't remember.
Is that
Trying
is it
to.
even over yet? Is it over yet?
Yeah, I think kind of. I think it kind of ended this year,
Okay,
early
cool.
this year, because like, but there was like this whole thing of like, I would see people like posting these photos of just like where the focus is like, it's just like completely like you focused as far into the
Oh,
foreground as you possibly
yeah, it's
can,
like
and
out of
everything.
focus and it's got motion blur.
Yeah, it's just like, and
Yeah,
it looks weird, and
totally.
I'm like, you have to understand what you're going for. And I try to explain to people who are like, well, I want to create this sort of look. I'm like, well, you have to understand where that look comes from, and then you can recreate it. Because then it goes back to like film photography, and people are like, the reason people are kind of liking this style is because they're looking at old film photos from like the 70s and 80s, where there's this
Mhm.
like things are not perfectly in focus, and things are like there is some motion blur or whatever. And I'm like, you have to understand people were manually focusing a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
or they, they only could go to a certain. This is something that I got back into shooting film a couple of years ago, and realized on like all my sort of like like older, like made in the 60s and 70s cameras and before, that the shutter speed only goes up so high. Like
Sure.
you
Yeah.
can't like
Like
switch.
1/2000th of a second. Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
1,000th. Like,
Oh wow.
we're talking
It's pretty limited.
anything before the 90s is like 1,000th of a second is the highest speed you can get. And So that leads to different things. And so you can, and so if you're understanding that and being intentional about it, you have to understand like, okay, this is why people are connecting with it. It's because they want this look of photos from this era. So if you really want to like create photos like that, start shooting at a lower shutter speed, start manually focusing things, and you're going to get more images, consistently more images like that aren't just like, I'm just going to focus completely out, like manually focus way out of focus, and you're not going to be able to see anything and or make sense of this photo.
You raise a very interesting point though about the why. It was typically tied, stylistically, why something looked caught on or just became like a trend 30, 40 years ago was often because of some technical constraint that people were just problem solving around to just make something interesting from. And that was representative of the technology of that time. And one thing I've always kind of not enjoyed is the resurfacing of a lot of different trends, even from like a few years ago all the way to decades ago, because I feel like it's kind of taking away what we can make now as a new thing, and give kind of this decade or decades its own visual identity that's totally different, right? It's so tempting to tap into that, like, oh, that's so vintage, or it kind of surfaces this instant nostalgic feel, which is great, but
the thing is
that thing came from an era of like working creatively through usually a technical constraint with the camera technology. We should be pushing ourselves right at the limit of what we can do now
to create
and who knows what kinds of things will surface. Exactly. Like that's really what I love to, I wish I could be even close to that eloquent. Not that it was really just then, but I wish I could more clearly explain that to my wedding clients in terms of my methodology or my mindset. Because, I'll do like anything requested of me from my couple if it is like a trendy look, but my default is usually kind of just, I want to be right at the limits of what I'm able to do with my physical camera gear and see what surfaces from that. So who knows? But yeah, just a lot of ideas tying in here. I like it.
I think that what's really interesting is you're getting like a lot of push for that sort of nostalgia from people who never experienced it in the first place. It's like younger millennials and Gen Z and alphas who are like, oh, we love this like look of like we found these old photos or whatever. We've seen these old photos and we love this thing that they never experienced it actually for themselves.
Right.
So they don't understand where it came from. Like if you grew up in the 80s, you knew like the film had limitations. Like, when you got like film pictures like developed and like you knew like it took time to get it developed, you knew the camera is not going to take low light photos unless you're using a flash, that you understood at least to some extent like why the images were coming back that way. You might not like technically be able to, but like you saw that and like you're kind of like harkening back, whereas people who experienced it harken back to it. It's simpler because there weren't so many things going on. There are younger people who harken back to it and feel nostalgic about a time they didn't experience because they want their lives to be simpler than it ever has been, I think, mentally. All right. I'm going to switch to another question. Like, we're getting close to the end here. I want to switch to another question, which is related, similar. At the end of the day, what do you think makes a photograph feel truly human, regardless of how much technology was involved in making it or in any step along the process?
Almost always it comes down for me to the expression of the person in it. And I got my start doing like landscapes and like cheesy macro shots of flowers and stuff. I grew up in Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. So that was kind of just what I had. I didn't start photographing people like at all until my first job in photography at this place called the National Press Club doing like press events. And once I started photographing people, it's completely boring to me to take pictures with people not in them. Like I barely take photos when I'm on vacation. I'm not the type of photographer to approach strangers. I don't like making people feel uncomfortable taking pictures of strangers on the street, blah, blah, blah. So I usually just kind of take like little snapshots, and that's fine. I barely take photos unless I've a person in front of me that has asked me to take the picture for them or hired me. And so all of that plays into then having that moment where you can feel so clearly the guard being let down and the vulnerability of the person, whether that's them being emotional in like a sad way, but more often, and given the content I shoot, people being emotional in a very happy and positive way. And I learned a lesson very early that I didn't even realize I was learning at the time. And I was dating a girl who was a psychology major, and she had a summer internship or something where she had to watch hours and hours and hours, like dozens of hours of footage of people being interviewed in front of just, in a conference room with a crappy video camera. And every time that person being interviewed, Duchenne smiled, she had to like check a box. And it was a lot of footage, and she wanted help. And so I helped her. And even just after an hour of watching this footage of people Duchenne smiling, which is where they smile with their, I forgot the technical name, but it's the muscles around your eyes, kind of like where your crow's feet might be if you have some wrinkle there.
Yeah.
But it's those muscles combined with the muscles around your mouth and nose. When those contract at the same time, that is a very, very unnatural thing. Or sorry, it's a very hard thing to fake. Most people do it when they're sincerely laughing, and that Duchenne smile is kind of one of those infectious things where just looking at pictures of people doing it will usually kind of start to make you smile or make you feel better. It's like when babies like start to smile because they're looking at their parents. Their parents usually Duchenne smiling. It's kind of an awkward name to say over and over.
That's whoever discovered it. That's what it's
yeah.
got the pleasure of being named after them.
Yes.
I think
and so that moment though is very something you can feel on an emotional level as a human. It's one of those sort of like when your hands are in your pockets and you feel more at ease because you're not likely to like punch you. Just on a basic human level, it dials into how you read facial expressions. And so for me, that connection, it's always what I'm aiming for, is that sort of peak moment where people are Duchenne smiling. Yeah, kind of funny.
I think what you're saying is empathy, like both from like the viewer of like viewing the image and all, but also mostly as the photographer, what creates that image is understanding that what the there's a relationship between the photographer and the subject, and not like it's not necessarily an active thing. Like it's not like you're saying like, oh, do this or do that or whatever. It's how you see your subject or feeling about your subject that comes through in the photo that you create. It's there, and having that humanity and empathy for your subject creates an image that is full of emotion, negative, positive, whatever the case may be, but is full of that weight. The more feeling is taking place, outside the camera, like between the subject and the photographer.
Totally. And where it really strikes gold is when you can capture that within a well-intentioned composition. And I mean, really the primary is the emotion. Everything else is secondary in my mind. But when you can reach the peak of both composition, lighting, and having captured that person being truly, emotive in whatever way they are being, that is what is just some of my favorite stuff from all kinds of photographers, especially because I think the person you're photographing is that they are who they are. They look the way they look because that's who they are. So that's what they're bringing. That's the half of the frame they're bringing to it. As the photographer, you're bringing the other half of everything else in the shot. Obviously the timing, but all of the framing, right? So photographers that have a playfulness in their compositions, where your eye kind of dances from one side to the other, or it keeps kind of following an intentional path of how you're visually looking at it. Like that's the photographer bringing their personality and their half. And a lot of times the client is all that's necessary. They do the heavy lifting in a lot of photos, but my favorite photographers are sort of a nice balance between both. The photographer is imbued like their playfulness, and it's captured within what the person they're photographing is bringing. So something
I
like
think
that.
that like I think this is my opinion. I just put that caveat out there before I say it. My opinion is like you learn all those technical things so that you can like that, so that it kind of becomes second nature. And since your composition, your shutters, or whatever, like because you're saying like, oh, I want to make this happen. I want to see this. Like, oh, this what will be great with this subject or whatever is happening in this moment would be whatever. So you can change your settings quickly to make that happen. But you're not really like thinking about it. It's not taking up the forefront of your brain.
Yes.
At the front of your brain
100%.
is this is what's happening in this moment. This is this person, and I want to create this. Like, I want people to see it this way, and I want them to see this part of this person or this thing that's happening between these two people, or whatever's going on. Like it's as a wedding photographer as well. Like you see things like like when there's a group dance, when people are all dancing, and you get to see like 9 different reactions in a photo. And sometimes you're like, I want to focus on this thing that's happening like between the bride and groom or the couple or whatever. I want to see that. I don't want to see the rest of stuff. So I go with a shallow depth of field, or I want to see everybody's reactions. So I'm going with a deeper focus so that we get all of it. We can see everybody's reactions to what's going on. So it's like understanding, your subject and so that all that stuff becomes second nature. It's going on in the background. So you're not having to like it's not getting in the way of your creativity.
Yep.
And
that is a huge part of the whole process. Every time I post a picture of like what's in my bag, people freak out because I don't have lens caps. And when I travel, I have rear caps. But when I'm actively shooting, I don't use front, I don't use hoods, and I don't use any caps at all. It just goes in and out of my bag. And I'm careful not to get them excessively dirty. I'm not going into a dust storm like that. But in general, you don't need your lenses as clean as you think you do. And for me, that's one example of dozens I could probably point to where I'm removing little points of friction because balancing something as simple as a lens cap during a ceremony where maybe you're switching lenses. Now you have to, there's this extra element of, it's like this subroutine now is running in your head of like having to put the cap on in a way that you're not going to drop it, right? You have to be careful, or you're thinking about it at all. And I just want that lens on my camera, off my camera as quickly as possible. I want zippers that are quiet. I want things that are like very fluid so that I'm even more in the conditions are right for me to be even more optimized for like the what you just said, like having things operate on an intuitive level without getting distracted and bogged down by, oh, where'd I put my lens cap? I don't know where it is. And now you're like missing who knows
taken
what,
out
like
of
as a moment.
Yeah. You're totally taken out of
100%.
All right. Last question.
Sure.
What advice would you give yourself if you were starting out today?
Okay. There's a lot of advice. So I'm just going to go with the first one that kind of surfaced with clarity. I immediately thought I needed as many flashes, like off-camera lights, as possible to be taken seriously as a photographer. I don't know if it's a hard thing to answer because obviously times are different now than they were 20 years ago when I started. So maybe it's not like this anymore, and maybe people don't have the urge when they first start shooting to go out and like learn off camera flash and get all the modifiers and light stands and like do that thing. But I just remember feeling very ill-equipped and like I didn't know what I was talking about, and like I couldn't even weigh in because I just didn't understand off camera flash as well as I thought I should. And I thought that being a real photographer necessitated being able to like craft a scene out of off-camera flash. Minimum 3 lights, or more. And there's photographers that do that are really great, and I can do that now, and it's fun, and there's a place for that, especially in more collaborative spaces with art directors and models, where you need more control in an environment that is able to reproduce at the exact same color temperatures, power settings, everything else as much as possible. Kind of like being on a film set. Like, that is a reason film sets exist with crews of 100 people, right? They need the control and the repeatability of a lot of the of what goes into it for most films. And so the fact that I would just really felt like I wasn't doing photography unless I had the gear acquired. And that could be applied probably for many photographers, not just to flashes, but lenses and other photographer peripherals. That's such a, it's just like this weird thing that was holding me back mentally, that cost me a lot of time that I could have otherwise spent on something I think way more beneficial. And now, like, I don't even bring a light stand to a wedding. I haven't brought one to a wedding in 15 years. I shoot with a flash, but bounce flash almost always, or direct flash with like a fun dragging the shutter effect, or a little LED video light that I have. And I'll just find a place to mount that thing or handhold it. It's absolutely not necessary to have all the gear you think you need. That being said, I do love acquiring gear just for the sake of seeing what, like, whether it's a new piece, where the technology is, or whether it's something old to see if it's got a unique characteristic or what have you. Like, there's certainly space for doing that kind of stuff, but the framing is a totally different from what I'm trying to express here, where I just felt like I wasn't being a photographer if I didn't have an understanding of off-camera flash or enough to do that. So that's. There's a lot of advice I'd give myself, that's for sure. So that's just that's what I'm going to leave you
I think that, like, kind of going along that line is like saying, like, you can still create with the equipment that you have, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, like, constantly be judging yourself for not having all of the things that you think you need to have. And, like, along those lines, I would give advice to say, like, slowly add to your gear and, like, see what you like and which directions you want to go. I think it's important to have a knowledge of flash. Do I think you always need to do off camera? Do you have to have like 8 different lights? Well, it depends on what you're going for, like what kind of look you want to have. Like, and you can certainly do things with on camera flash.
That's the thing, though.
One
that's
light,
the great trick.
Yeah, like those sorts of things. Like, figure things out slowly before you, like, feel the need to, like, I got to go out and buy like 6 lights right now. No, you don't.
Well, that's the thing that was always stressful for me, was I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
So what if once I get that 4th flash, it unlocks something? The funny thing is that unlock, that never really happens.
No, it doesn't.
Almost never. No. Right? It's definitely earned over time, and you sort of look back and realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I do have a style where I was in a phase then. Like, it's not something that typically actively happens. Yeah.
Well, I think you gravitate towards certain looks for periods of time. It's much like any artist has a phases. Like, you talk about, like,
yes,
this is Picasso's blue phase, whatever. Like, this is my 5 light off camera flash phase, or you can decide, like, later on, I want to experiment with this thing and do something else, or I want to pull back. I think having a basic knowledge of a lot of things is good to, like, start from. And I wouldn't say, like,
definitely,
you don't need to learn flash. I think that you should have an idea of how to use the flash. I think that, like, but it's not like setting yourself up for, like, it's the thing that I get from a lot of people is like, I could do this if I had X lens. Like, no, try to, like, make photos that you want to create with what you have now and work towards that. Because people will, like, look at my gear bag and be like, oh man, I'm so jealous. And I'm like, yeah, I've put that together over like 25 years. This is not like I went out and bought it all one afternoon and then all of a sudden I just knew everything, I knew how to use all of it.
And you see people all the time go out and acquire, usually people that have jobs that actually afford the ability to do this. They'll go out and acquire every lens, one day for their birthday, the, like, dentist down the street.
Yeah.
And and you see no difference in their output. And it's like, there's also the possibility of collapsing under, again, the amount of options in front of you.
Like, you got a 200 millimeter f2? Like, really? Like, what do you do? Well, I'm
exactly.
I'm a lawyer. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, photographers, are you ready for a website glow up? Get supercharged with StyleCloud. StyleCloud offers beautifully designed, high-performing website templates built just for creatives like you. Whether you're showcasing weddings, portraits, or passion projects, you'll look as good online as your work does in print. Were you left high and dry and wondering what you were going to do with your Flow Themes website when the company shut down? No problem. StyleCloud makes migrating your Flow Themes site easy. Your content moves over, no stress, no mess. Plus, import your images directly from your PicTime galleries. No downloading, no re-uploading, just seamless integration and stunning design. Visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/stylecloud or visit the link in the episode notes. Save 15% when you use code nerdyphoto15 at checkout. That's nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/stylecloud and use code nerdyphoto15. StyleCloud isn't just a template, it's a launchpad for your brand. Get started today. Hey, photographers, imagine losing every photo, project, or document in a single crash. Scary, right? That's why there's Backblaze, the simple, reliable, and automatic way to back up your important data and photos to the cloud. Photographers, creatives, and everyday users, Backblaze protects what matters most with unlimited backup and easy recovery whenever you need it. I use Backblaze as part of my workflow to back up my most recent shoots until they're delivered to my clients, my most important business photos and documents as well, and all of my personal photos and videos. It's just $9 a month or $99 a year for unlimited data backup from one computer with 1 year version history and access to your data from anywhere. Crashes happen. With Backblaze, your files are safe, secure, and just a click away. Start your backup today at nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/Backblaze or click the link in the episode notes, because peace of mind is priceless. That's nerdyphotographer.com/Backblaze, because you never know when a crash is going to happen.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
Hey, it's time for our useless information for this episode.
Awesome.
Do you know where the term blue bloods comes from?
No, I would think something aristocratic, perhaps, or
you would be correct.
vampiric. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Aristocracy in Spain in the Middle Ages, because if you weren't outside working or toiling and you had very fair skin, you weren't out in the sun, whatever, you very pale, very, very pale person, and you can see your blood looks blue. So people who were
cool.
blue-blooded were, untainted by toiling
It's
work.
a compliment. Oh, hey, blue blood.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start saying that to my friends. You're very blue blood today.
You're so pale. You're so pale.
No, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. I'm gonna start trying that on the internet. See how it goes in the comment section.
I don't know if I would. Sam, thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you? Is there anything you would like to let people know about? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm most active on probably my patreon.com/Sam Hurd. But really just my main website, Sam Hurd Photography, and my blog is still fairly active with gear reviews and stuff like that. And then Instagram is instagram.com/IamTheSam. And Hurd is spelled Hurd, in case anybody's like, Hurd.
Hurd.
Yeah. You heard photography? I don't get the joke. Yeah, it's that's me. So
I will include all of those links in the episode notes if people want to find them. Again, Sam, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Bye, Casey.
And we're back. Huge thanks to Sam Hurd for being on the show. Be sure to check the episode notes and follow Sam and check out his work. While you're doing that following thing, be sure to follow us, the Nerdy Photographer, on the socials at The Nerdy Photo. That's at The Nerdy Photo, no dots, underscores, or dashes, on Instagram, Reddit, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Be sure to subscribe to the show and do us the huge favor of leaving a review. Do you remember any of your old crews, Fib?
Sure. I remember them. There have been so many. Bowman, Poole, Weir, Miller, Whitman, Price, Haddad.
Until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.